Easter Island has always been one of the world's greatest mysteries. When people look at the famous statues standing across the landscape, it's easy to believe they are just giant stone heads staring silently at the ocean. But when scientists began digging below the surface, they discovered that the truth was far more complex than anyone had ever imagined. These massive heads were not just heads at all, they had full bodies buried deep beneath the ground for centuries. This finding completely changed everything experts thought they knew about Easter Island's history and the people who lived there. When a team of archaeologists began their excavation in 2010, they uncovered the hidden bodies of the statues, known as moai. As they carefully removed layers of dirt and rocks, more of the statues appeared: shoulders, chests, arms, and hands folded neatly over their stomachs. Some of these buried bodies extended as far as 30 feet underground. These hidden sections of the statues revealed incredible carvings, patterns, and symbols that had been perfectly preserved by the soil. There were spirals, crescents, and intricate markings that seemed to tell stories about the people who had built them. The team, led by Dr. Joe and Van Tilburg, realized that the placement of each statue was not random. Every moai faced inland, toward the villages where people once lived. It was as if the statues were guardians, watching over their descendants and protecting them from harm. Some of them even wore large red stone hats, called pukao, which symbolized the topknots worn by powerful chiefs. The size of the hat reflected the importance of the person represented by the statue. During the excavation, archaeologists found ancient tools left behind by the workers who had carved the statues. Stone picks, hammers, and chisels were discovered lying exactly where they had been dropped centuries earlier, as if the workers had suddenly abandoned the site. These discoveries gave a glimpse into the craftsmanship of the ancient builders. The moai were not crude or simple creations. They were masterpieces of design and engineering, made with astonishing precision and detail. The faces were realistic, with long ears, defined noses, and serious expressions. Some even had eyes made from white coral with black stone pupils, giving them an almost lifelike presence, as though they were truly watching over the island. In 2011, scientists made another unexpected discovery. Near the quarry where the statues were carved, they found dozens of pits filled with a bright red pigment. This pigment was a carefully prepared mixture of iron oxides such as hematite and magamite, producing a rich crimson color. What made this finding remarkable was that these pits were created between 1200 and 1650 CE, long after the island's forests had vanished. For years, researchers had believed that the loss of trees led to the collapse of the island's civilization. But these pigment pits proved that even after deforestation, the people of Easter Island continued to thrive. They were still organized, still following their traditions, and still creating beautiful works of art. The pigment was used for something deeply spiritual. In Polynesian culture, red was a sacred color symbolizing power, life, and divine energy. The people used this pigment to paint the moai statues, their ceremonial objects, and even their own bodies during important rituals. The amount of pigment found was massive enough to paint hundreds of statues multiple times. This meant that society on Easter Island was not collapsing during this time but was, in fact, flourishing. Archaeologists like Dr. Welmode, who studied these pits, found that they were carefully constructed with stone linings and fitted lids to protect the pigment from the elements. This level of planning showed that producing and storing pigment was a coordinated community effort. People had to mine the materials, grind them into powder, transport them to the pits, and organize their use during ceremonies. This kind of cooperation proved that Easter Island's society was far more complex and enduring than scientists had once believed. Another shocking discovery came when archaeologists began exploring beneath the moai platforms, known as a hu. They uncovered hidden underground chambers that had been sealed for hundreds of years. These chambers were burial sites built with the same kind of precise stonework seen in the statues themselves. Inside, scientists found the remains of important people, possibly chiefs, priests, and master craftsmen, along with jewelry, tools, and carved wooden artifacts. Some of the shells used in the jewelry had come from thousands of miles away, showing that the islanders had connections to distant parts of the Pacific. Building these chambers was an extraordinary feat of engineering. The builders had to carve through solid rock and fit massive stone blocks so tightly together that no mortar was needed. The rooms were designed to resist earthquakes and flooding, protecting their contents for centuries. Some chambers even held several generations of the same family, showing that certain bloodlines held great importance in Easter Island society. The oldest burials dated back to around 1000 CE, proving that the island had been inhabited and culturally active for far longer than historians once thought. The burial chambers also helped solve another long-standing mystery about the moai. Many platforms had small niches carved into them, and no one had known what they were for. The discovery revealed that these niches were used for offerings, food, water, and precious objects placed to honor the ancestors buried beneath the statues. The chambers also contained traces of the same red pigment found elsewhere, showing that it was likely used during burial rituals as a sacred symbol of life and rebirth. In 1978, another remarkable discovery changed how people viewed the moai forever. Archaeologist Sergio Rapu noticed small fragments of white coral scattered around various statue sites. After studying them closely, he realized they were the remains of eyes that had once been placed in the moai's sockets. These coral eyes, combined with pupils made from obsidian or volcanic rock, would have made the statues appear alive. When light hit the eyes, they would glimmer and seem to follow movement, giving the impression that the ancestors themselves were watching over the living. Each eye was perfectly carved to fit its statue, showing that they were individually designed by specialized craftsmen. Installing the eyes was the final stage of a long process that included quarrying, carving, transporting, and raising the statue onto its platform. Only after this was completed were the eyes inserted, symbolically bringing the moai to life. However, not every statue received eyes. Only the most sacred or significant ones, those representing powerful ancestors or located in important ceremonial sites, were given them. This revealed a social hierarchy, not just among the people but among the statues themselves. When modern archaeologists recreated and installed coral eyes into one of the statues, they were stunned by how lifelike it appeared. The once silent and expressionless face now seemed alert and aware, almost conscious. It became clear why the islanders had believed these statues were living guardians. To them, the moai weren't mere symbols, they were ancestors watching and protecting their descendants. But perhaps the most mysterious discovery of all was the set of wooden tablets found in the 19th century. In 1864, a French missionary named Eugene Iraud discovered strange wooden boards covered with symbols that no one could understand. The islanders called them rongo rongo, meaning to chant or to recite. The markings were not random scratches or decorations, they were a form of writing, carefully arranged in rows that alternated direction from left to right and then right to left, a system known as boustrophédon. The tablets contained hundreds of symbols representing humans, animals, plants, and geometric shapes. Some appeared repeatedly, suggesting that they might represent common words, names, or ceremonial instructions. Others were rarer, perhaps representing numbers or special events. This writing system indicated that the islanders had developed a sophisticated form of literacy, something previously thought impossible for an isolated Pacific culture. Unfortunately, by the time Europeans arrived, very few islanders still knew how to read the rongo rongo script. The knowledge had been passed down orally for generations, and with the arrival of missionaries and the destruction of local traditions, it quickly disappeared. The few elders who could still read the tablets were reluctant to share their knowledge, fearing punishment or misunderstanding by outsiders. As a result, the meaning of rongo rongo remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved mysteries. Modern scholars have tried to decode the tablets, comparing them to other Polynesian symbols, petroglyphs, and oral traditions, but so far, no one has successfully translated them. Some researchers believe the writing might record genealogies, prayers, or astronomical observations. Others think it may contain historical records of great events or myths describing the origins of the islanders themselves. Whatever the truth, it proves that Easter Island's people were not just builders and artists, they were thinkers and storytellers with a written culture as complex as any in the ancient world. Taken together, all these discoveries completely transform our understanding of Easter Island. The people who built the moai were not primitive or isolated. They were intelligent, creative, and organized, capable of constructing enormous monuments, managing resources, and preserving spiritual traditions over centuries. Their society had skilled engineers, artists, and priests who worked together to honor their ancestors and maintain harmony between the living and the dead. The buried bodies of the Moai, the secret pigment pits, the hidden burial chambers, the glowing coral eyes, and the mysterious Rongo Rongo tablets all tell the same story. Easter Island was once home to a sophisticated and deeply spiritual civilization that achieved remarkable things in one of the most remote places on Earth. And even though much of their knowledge has been lost to time, their legacy still stands, carved in stone and whispering through the winds that sweep across the island's silent hills. Easter Island has always been one of the world's most mysterious places, but one discovery makes it stand out even more. It is the only island in all of Polynesia to have created its own writing system. No other island across the vast Pacific, neither Hawaii, Tahiti, nor New Zealand ever developed a native written language before Europeans arrived. The wooden tablets found there, covered with strange symbols, are known as Rongo Rongo. These tablets were not just writing, they were works of art. Each symbol was carved with great care using shark teeth and sharp pieces of volcanic glass called obsidian. The carvings were neat, evenly spaced, and beautifully shaped. The wood used for these tablets came from trees that no longer grow on the island today, suggesting that they were either extremely old or perhaps made from driftwood that floated from faraway lands. For more than 150 years, scholars have tried to decode the Rongo Rongo symbols, but their true meaning remains a mystery. Some experts believe that the carvings recorded family histories, tracing the bloodlines of the island's earliest settlers. Others think the symbols described religious chants, astronomical movements, or records of major events. A few surviving islanders who remembered the Rongo Rongo tradition said the tablets were not read silently like books. Instead, trained chanters used them as memory aids to recite long oral stories and traditions. Each symbol acted as a reminder, helping them keep the order and details of tales that could take hours to perform. This system made Rongo Rongo unique in the world. It did not replace spoken storytelling, it worked with it. It created a double form of memory, one spoken, one written, so that even if one was forgotten, the other could help keep the culture alive. The mystery of Rongo Rongo remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved puzzles. These tablets prove that the ancient people of Easter Island were far more advanced than most had believed. They built a society capable of inventing ideas and systems that existed nowhere else in their part of the world. Another major discovery on the island came from the site of Orongo, where archaeologists found proof of a huge cultural shift that changed the island's history forever. Around the year 1400 CE, the people's focus began to move away from their ancestors and the building of giant statues, known as moai, toward the worship of a new god connected to a half-bird, half-human figure called the birdman. The evidence for this change is clear. Work on the moai statues suddenly stopped. Many were abandoned in the quarries, unfinished. The islanders' energy turned instead toward building a ceremonial village on the edge of the Reino Cow crater, overlooking 3 small islands offshore. At Orongo, archaeologists found 53 stone houses with arched corbelled roofs, a type of construction unknown anywhere else in Polynesia. These houses were not regular homes but temporary shelters for people who took part in the annual birdman competition, one of the most important rituals in the island's later years. The walls and surrounding rocks of Orongo are covered with more than 480 petroglyphs, rock carvings that show birdman figures, depictions of the creator god Makemake, and scenes of religious ceremonies. These carvings were made by pecking designs into the hard volcanic rock using stone tools. Even after centuries of wind, sun, and rain, many of these images remain clear. The birdman competition was held each spring and was both dangerous and sacred. Representatives from different clans would swim across shark-infested waters to the small offshore island of Motunui to collect the first egg laid by a certain seabird known as the sooty tern. The man whose representative brought back the first egg would become the birdman for that year. His clan leader would hold great power over the island's resources until the next competition. Excavations at Orongo have revealed many traces of this ceremony. Archaeologists found stone tools, bird bones, and eggshells scattered across the site, showing how the participants prepared for their perilous mission. They also found obsidian knives and spear points, suggesting that violence sometimes broke out as rival groups fought for control over the nesting area. This dramatic shift from ancestor worship and Moai building to the Birdman cult represented a complete change in how Easter Island society functioned. Instead of honoring ancestors through huge stone statues, the new system focused on living competition and renewal. Power no longer came from birthright but from bravery, skill, and spiritual strength. Many experts believe that this shift was caused by growing environmental pressure. As the island's resources became scarcer, the old system of authority based on lineage may have seemed ineffective. The Birdman cult offered a new, more dynamic way to choose leaders, those who could prove themselves through courage and divine favor. Interestingly, similar Birdman carvings have been found on other Polynesian islands, suggesting that this belief system may have connected Easter Island back to the broader Polynesian culture after centuries of isolation. The sudden and complete move from Moai worship to the Birdman religion marks a clear turning point in the island's history, a moment when the people reinvented their society to survive changing times. Recent archaeological research combined with DNA analysis has brought even more astonishing discoveries about the island's people. For decades, scientists believed that Easter Island's society destroyed itself through deforestation, war, and even cannibalism, leading to total collapse. But new evidence tells a very different story. DNA from ancient human remains shows that Easter Island's population remained stable and healthy for centuries, longer than anyone had thought possible. Excavations revealed organized villages, advanced farming systems, and continued cultural activity right up until European contact in 1722. There were no signs of massive warfare or chaos before outsiders arrived. The real collapse came later, after Europeans reached the island, and it was caused not by the islanders themselves but by diseases and slavery brought from abroad. Historical records and archaeological evidence show that between 1722 and 1877, the population fell from around 3,000 people to just 111 survivors, a shocking 96% decline. Diseases such as smallpox and tuberculosis spread rapidly among people who had no immunity. Families died out, and traditional social structures broke apart. Even worse were the Peruvian slave raids of 1862 and 1863, when more than 1,400 islanders, about half of the population, were captured and forced to work in mines and plantations in South America. Most of them died within months, and the few who returned brought deadly diseases with them, causing even more deaths on the island. Archaeological sites from that time show hurried burials and abandoned homes, clear signs of a society struggling to survive. Yet despite losing nearly everyone, the surviving Rapa Nui people managed to preserve their Polynesian identity. DNA studies show that they did not mix much with outsiders but rebuilt their community from the small group that survived. However, because so many elders were lost, much of the island's traditional knowledge disappeared within a single generation. The Rongo writing system, the techniques for carving moai, and the complex ceremonial rituals were all forgotten. This loss also explains many of the island's long-standing mysteries. The unfinished statues, the scattered stone tools left at quarry sites, and the toppled moai across the island all date to this period of collapse in the 1800s, not centuries earlier as once thought. Thanks to modern technology, archaeologists are now rewriting Easter Island's story. It is no longer seen as a tragic tale of environmental failure but as one of cultural endurance and survival against overwhelming external threats. Today, archaeologists studying Easter Island have powerful tools that earlier researchers could only dream of. Technologies like ground-penetrating radar, satellite mapping, DNA testing, and 3D modeling are revealing new details about the island's past. Radar scans have detected hidden structures beneath the ground, ancient buildings, roads, and possibly ceremonial platforms that had been buried for centuries. From space, satellite images have exposed faint outlines of old paths, settlements, and farmland invisible to the naked eye. These findings show that Easter Island was once far more populated and carefully managed than anyone realized. Meanwhile, 3D laser scans of the moai statues capture even the smallest details, preserving digital models that let experts study the statues without touching or damaging them. The ongoing Easter Island statue project continues to excavate buried moai, revealing their full bodies and discovering carvings that had been hidden underground for centuries. Over 150 statues have already been unearthed, and hundreds more remain buried, waiting to tell their story. Modern archaeologists are also using computer simulations to test how the ancient islanders moved these massive statues across the land. Some theories now suggest that the moai were walked upright using ropes and careful coordination, combining physics, balance, and community teamwork. These digital experiments help researchers understand how such a small, isolated society could achieve such impressive engineering feats without modern tools or animals. All these discoveries together are reshaping how we see Easter Island. It is no longer a story about a civilization that destroyed itself, but one about creativity, adaptation, and survival. The people of Easter Island proved that even in isolation, humans can build something extraordinary, an entire culture based on art, ritual, and innovation. Every new discovery adds to a story that is richer and more complex than anyone ever expected. The true history of Easter Island is still being uncovered. Many mysteries remain hidden under the soil, chambers, carvings, and unfinished statues waiting to be found. As technology advances and new excavations continue, more pieces of this incredible story will come to light. What lies beneath Easter Island is not a warning of human failure, but a reminder of human strength and imagination. It tells us that even after near extinction, a people can hold on to their identity, their culture, and their spirit. The real story of Easter Island is not about collapse, it is about survival, resilience, and the timeless power of human creativity.